Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Journey Journals. Thank you, as always, for joining us. My name is Gaia, and I'm very excited about today's topic because we are going to be discussing plant medicine integration. Now, in previous interviews, we have looked into plant medicine integration and the importance of it. But today, with the help of my special guest, Carlos, welcome, Carlos.
Hi, I am. How are you? Super excited to be here and to start talking about something that I think we're both very, very passionate about. So, can't wait to get started.
100%. It's one of my favorite discussions. Now, Carlos, we are going to, as I mentioned, take a much deeper dive into the process and importance of plant medicine integration. And as you mentioned to me earlier, and I'm going to quote you, you said each person is a universe and therefore requires a far more tailored and specific approach in the plant medicine integration process. So I'd love to jump in and get started right away. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your background, and what is it that led you to be interested and start studying plant medicine integration in the way that you do?
I think the way that I got started into this was just like my own process. I was looking for a way of doing things differently because sometimes you get stuck in your own thing. And for me personally, like there was a sense of like, this is how it's going to be and this is what it is. So I don't know. It was hard to accept. So, looking at different modalities and different things, I just landed in plant medicine, and it just showed me that you can go with the same plant and the same sitter and the same experience, but it's going to be completely different every time you go because we're always changing. So, it's just a nice way of remembering that we're always evolving. So, the fact that how we integrate those experiences is as important as the experience itself. Maybe one experience was more aligned with spirit, so the integration should be a little bit more towards that. Or maybe it was super like reason driven and like just like cognitive and like logical, so the integration should support that. So it's not that I'm specialized in integration or anything, but I have had that interest on plant medicine and facilitating and holding space, and integration is a key component. So from the three main stages of ceremony, which is like setting intention, the ceremony, and the integration, I think that talking today about the third one and the importance of it and like the different, like how I learned it, like the different dimensions of integration, it's a nice, interesting conversation. So hopefully everybody finds it as interesting as I know we do.
Absolutely. Carlos, I'd love to hear just a little bit, if you wouldn't mind touching on the different modalities that you've studied and different courses that you've participated in.
Sure. So I've had the luck or the pleasure of sitting with many plant medicines, which within itself is just like a course of it. I enjoy very much the fact that it's my own syllabus. Like all those experiences have been like a crash course on something. Like all the different medicines have different ways of holding you. So that's in a learning within itself. So I've been lucky enough to have a lot of experience with different ones, but that trigger an interest in learning a little bit more and going deeper. So I've had the chance to train with different organizations. Like just right now, I finished with one called Synthesis from Amsterdam. Like next year, I'm going to start one with ecstatic mysticism. I've had many teachers and many like they know that they're teachers, and some might even not know that they have a teacher of mine, because the whole point is just getting the learnings that work for you and resonate for you and how you're going to apply it for yourself. And if I'm holding space, how am I going to apply it or share them with those people that are under my care? So throughout the years, I think it's been more than 6-7 years now, where I've just been like eating up every piece of knowledge that comes in front of me because I'm really passionate about it. And the most important thing is that I know it works. It's worked for me and it's worked for the many people that have sat in front of me and with me. So that would be a little bit of my experience.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And just to take a quick step back for viewers who may not have experienced a plant medicine ceremony or experienced what the integration process is, would you mind taking a moment to just explain what the integration process is in a plant medicine ceremony? And then also, why is it so important to take a more specific, tailored approach within that integration as opposed to a more generic approach?
I think that like every experience with plant medicine is so big and so different from each person that inevitably the integration is going to be different. I think that each person is its own, like just like I think we mentioned before, its own universe, and it's completely different. But at the end of the day, everybody's connected within the same experience. So there's a common thread in terms of like how it works, from like setting intention to ceremony to integration. But that doesn't mean that it has to be like a cookie cutter approach where like one solution is going to solve everybody. So I think part of it is just understanding what integration is, so we can understand how integration can be for each person. Like all the processes and visions and like experiences and feelings that come from a plant medicine journey, they're like filtered to your day to day when you go back. Like it's important to know that when the person goes into the journey, they're the ones that have all this realization, but they're going to go back to their world where nobody has been in a journey. And that person can feel like, oh, everybody is in the same level as I am. So everything's going to be peachy because now everybody's connected and you have this sense of self-purpose and like driven and I know what to do. But you're going back to your life where it was the same before you did the journey. So it's important to have that in mind, and it's important to just like do it with a sense of awareness, with a sense of wholeness, with like a lot of empowerment and consciousness towards it, because that's what can make an integration challenging. Thinking that everybody is in the same boat as you are and that everybody understood your journey, which is even more important, can affect you more, because sometimes we can't even describe our journey because it was so out there that the words feel so primitive. That has happened to me where I feel like I'm not doing justice to my journey by explaining it with my words, because it's like bleh. And it was that the experience was so like fireworks and everything was amazing. So that's why integration is so important, because you really understand what happened in your experience, so you don't feel the need to express it, but just feel it. And like with the word, like the word says, integrate it to your own life and go about it without having to feel like everybody gets you, like and everybody is in the same boat. So that's why it's so important to have like this present and be mindful that every experience is different, every person is different, and just integrate the best possible way so it can not only be effective for you, but to the community that you're going back to.
I agree with you 100%. The part of being understood by others after a plant medicine ceremony is crucial. And, I've felt challenged with it myself. I absolutely agree with you that words are so limiting to the whole process and to the whole experience. And it's a very frustrating experience, at least for me, to try and explain what actually happened. Now, I wanted to speak to you about the actual integration. Now, I have, like yourself, facilitated and participated in many integrations. And I have to say, I've always looked at it from a very sort of general and broad angle. But it was in our conversation with each other that led us to have this interview that you highlighted for me for the first time that there are, different angles and different dimensions to the experience. And you started pointing out some of them, which I found immensely helpful and insightful, how you broke it down and looked at it from different angles. And I'd love to start talking a little bit about that and the different dimensions that you mentioned in integration and how they contribute to the overall healing process.
I think we all know that like at the end of the day, like change is gonna be inevitable in integration, and like having no judgment is so important, and that we need to like hold this with like reverence and respect and everything. But the most important part to me during integration is that what is going to be doing the healing is the person itself. Like we can set up this the best way possible and like feel that we're helping the most, but is that like the inner compass of the person, or the inner like their wisdom is what's going to make the actual healing. But to that point, like it's important also to like listen into that wisdom that is shared upon with you during the like the experience itself and during the integration, to really know what resonates most with that person based on the experience that they had. So I learned like that there's, like you mentioned, different dimensions for integration, and that really opened my eyes, because that has happened to me before, where there's experiences that are more with spirit, where I connected with source, and like, so my integration had to be more about that. But there's other ones that it was more a creative thing, where I felt like I was just like super fertile and like super like just wanting to do new stuff. So I learned that there's 7 dimensions of integration. So it can be a cognitive is one, where it's more about the reason portion of it, where the logical aspect of things of your life, like what makes sense for you, you know. The other one's somatic, which is like more in the body, like your body experience through like we know that during journeys and sacred plant ceremonies, there's a lot that happens in the body that you can really release something, or you can be processing some like past trauma that really just comes out in a body form. There's another dimension for like a relational or cultural, which is how you relate to yourself, how you relate to your community, to your family, to your friends. Maybe you had like a really deep process with your mother or with your father or with somebody you thought that wasn't even in your realm of memory, somebody that in preschool did something to you that really came out in that journey, and it was based on that relationship and how you were seen and how you saw the other person. Another dimension would be emotional, which is like, how do I express my feelings? How do I connect with my own emotions? How do I show up to the other person with vulnerability to like really show what's in me? And how do I accept when the other person doesn't meet my vulnerability? Because that's key also to like opening up, is just to be received. But sometimes it doesn't happen. So the integration should, like, if it's an emotional experience, the integration should be about that too. Another one is what I mentioned before, like a spiritual or like this, like a existential ceremony. Like those are like the media, the juicier ones to me. You know, like that, like why are we here? Like we're all spirit and we're connected to source and everything, but part of that integration is also like, all right, what are the other spiritual practices that maybe I should be like looking into and like accepting, you know, like that's what make a wholesome integration work, which is like, all right, I was connected to spirit, but spirit is everything. So I should see the other ways that other people see spirit, so that I can really integrate with when I'm going back to my family and to everything. And if I go to Thanksgiving dinner and uncle whatever is talking about some religion, what, so you can like hold space for that person because your integration with spirit was so wholesome and so positive that you're okay with everything that encompasses spirit, that is not just what you live. Another was creative. So I had the pleasure of holding space for people that just like are creative people, musicians, painters, and they just want to like, maybe there's a little block there and they want to go deeper into like more inspiration and connect to that source of inspiration. So there's a lot of like going into the arts or going into music or drawing or going to nature and just like being very childlike and curious to see what's going to trigger that spark of inspiration to be creative. And there's also like more, let's call it a political, you know, like more down to earth, which is like, what are my beliefs in where I stand in society, or like what's the, not so much the moral compass of myself, but like where I stand within the society. And those are more pragmatic and more down to earth type of like integrations. But there's people that if you have the first ceremony or the first plant medicine experience, it's hard to relate it to something that's so ethereal or so out there. So if we want to keep it a little closer to ground, is about your immediate ecosystem and your immediate society and what's happening in the world and how you relate to that, so that the integration can be a little bit more graspable, if you want to call it. So those are the different dimensions of integration. And as you can see within itself, there's a big world of it that we can go really deep in it, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be in the cognitive realm forever. Like we're always evolving. So maybe you go into cognitive, but tomorrow you do another ceremony, it's completely emotional. So it's important that on one end we really integrate that first dimension, but if another dimension comes in, it's not like I'm going to forget this one. It's just how they complement each other, so we can become like wholesome human beings. We like fully accept ourselves, we continue to learn of where we stand on the different dimensions, and that we drive our like integration with coherence and with some sort of like connective thread of what makes me the person that I am and what makes me different from you, and but at the same time what connects me to you.
Thank you, Carlos. That's very interesting. And, as I'm sitting here listening to you sort of go into all the different dimensions and explain each one and sort of create the distinctions between them, it's had me sort of start looking at my previous journeys through that lens. And for sure, I was sort of lumping them all together. But absolutely, I've had journeys and ceremonies and experiences that were very, very deeply spiritual, and others that were, far more body related, and others that went into creativity and creation. So yeah, I'm looking at it through this lens now, and I think it's so important that the facilitator as well as the participant starts to view it as this lens and starts to create a more cohesive integration, put it that way. So I'm interested to kind of look a little bit more into some of these dimensions. And you mentioned the somatic physical dimension. Can we speak a little bit more into that, or would you mind explaining a little bit more about that?
I think that we've all had, well, not all, like you and I, like we've had the pleasure of holding space for people, and even individually, we can see that there's some like very bodily movements and like reactions to the sacred, to the plant medicine. And some people alluded to the medicine itself. Some people alluded to the experience of the person, how it's coming in. Others say that you're releasing some energy, but inevitably there's some body component to the experience itself. And like we've always known, like the body keeps the score, so it's just like trying to show you parts of yourself that maybe there's no like clear access to it on a conscious way of like, all right, this is the memory that triggered this, and this was the implication that happened, and this is how you affect me, and how. So it's hard to like put all those pieces together when you're at that altered state of mind. So the first piece that allows you to show you that something's up is your body. So an important part of like, or dimension on the integration is the somatic, which is like all the physical sensations and all the like not only the bodily sensations, but like your digestion, how to like how you react to certain foods or diet or like sleep or like things like that, that essentially really allow you to be connected to your body, you know. So during that integration is just keeping like a close eye on that and saying, like, right, if this person had an experience with their body sensations in terms of like my heart was hurting, or I have like a really big shoulder pain, or more about pains in different parts of the body, is about like looking into that and like going to like exercise or like yoga or like movements or flow or dance where you can like really feel your body and connect to those parts. Like I was saying before, like maybe it wasn't so much of as a physical sensation, but just like an like some, it can sound weird, but like you connect with an organ, you know, like like my wife, for example, she's like, oh, I felt my liver. Like I think that like that's fascinating to hear, like you can have that connection to your body and like feeling an organ. So let's go deeper into that, into the journey. If you feel your stomach or something, like let's go into the diet or how to digest, or how do you eat. Like are you like not so much what you eat but how you eat? Are you like watching TV and not paying attention to your food, or like, so it's a bit more aware of the things that you do with that organ that allows you to integrate it a little bit better. And who knows, maybe something comes up, like that's the whole idea of like the body's trying to show you something. So maybe most likely it's going to be tied to a memory or an event that happened to you, that it wants to be seen, that through the organ of the stomach can remind you about, hey, maybe I had this relationship with food, like that I didn't know, that I have to look into. Or maybe I'm really trying to find out what I'm really hungry for, which is not necessarily food, but it's just a metaphor to see like, all right, maybe it's about that. Like my stomach is trying to show me that I am trying to feed my body, not in terms of food. I'm trying to feed my life with things that are nourishing me. So what does really nourish me? You know, so These are things that with different tools and different more somatic driven tools, like I said, dance or massage, or like just being outside with nature and like feeling the earth and feeling the trees and things, you can really connect to that and give you a sense of why that experience was so heavy in the body and somatically, and how can that help you connect to yourself and to the people around you. So that would be just breaking it down a little bit of the somatic one. And one thing that I'm truly aware that maybe like I wanted to just voice out is that I know like my limitations as a facilitator. So if I know that it was a really strong somatic experience, the most important thing is to refer them to people that can really help them on that. So if there's a breath work practitioner that I feel can really help them, refer them to that. Or if there's a masseuse, like a body worker that can really help them, I'll refer them to that. It's just like really important not to be like listening to the person to really know where they went through, but just listening to myself of knowing where I begin and where I end, because the whole point of facilitating and holding space is to help the other person. So I have to be honest with myself with saying like, oh, I am not a body worker. I can see that this is a somatic experience. I can help this person so far, but I know that this other person does a qigong, for example, and I can send them to them because I know that's going to help them. So it's building that support system so we can really help the community and really help the people that are coming to us, you know?
Amazing. And I love what you said about sort of checking in with the different organs of your body. And I wanted to add something about that, based on another interview that I recently listened to, is that I've heard of people also check into illnesses that they may have. And I recently watched or listened to a great interview on NPR, which was with Dr. Professor Roland Griffiths. And unfortunately, he passed away very, very recently, but he was a pioneer in psychedelics research and experimentation at Johns Hopkins University. And he was helping people who are experiencing existential crisis because of a terminal illness that they've recently been diagnosed with. And it was helping them with the use of psilocybin and psychedelics to, create acceptance and calm around that, until he was diagnosed with cancer himself.
Mm.
And the interview is about his journey and meeting his cancer and having the conversation with his cancer. And it's the most beautiful interview ever. I'm not going to spoil it by saying what he says, but I'll put a link below for people who are interested in understanding more about that and connecting sort of to the more somatic experience of it. I think it's wonderful. So going from the somatic experience into the spiritual experience, Carlos, and again, just based on a couple of things that I've watched recently, I was at the movies not too long ago watching Near Death, which is a documentary that's just come out on the near-death experience. And there was a part where they mentioned how the near-death experience and the psychedelic experience, there's so many similarities that people speak about, and the enormity of the spiritual experience that both provide. Now, I have to say for myself, I've had profoundly spiritual experiences with psychedelics. They were life-changing, I have to say. And I wanted to ask you about the spiritual dimensions of integration, and how those help connect with a deeper sense of purpose.
I think I'm like you. I've had most of my experiences have been more spiritual. I just love those because it just connect me to something, remind me that I'm connected to something bigger than myself. But yeah, talking about a little bit more about the spirit one, it's like everything that, I don't want to say question, but everything that brings up your entire like perception to the world and like beliefs and your morals or your values, like everything that it's like drives your understanding of life and why we're here and why everything is happening and what's up essentially. I think that this one is the one that the integration can be the most long lasting because there's never a clear answer. Like is not necessarily tied to an experience or tied to like a personal event or a trauma or anything. It's just the eternal question of why are we here, or what's my purpose in life, or things like that. That it's beautiful because we learn that it's always changing. You know, like it's not like the first ceremony. It's like, oh, some people are lucky enough to like really find that, like, all right, this is my purpose, and they go at it, and like that's beautiful too. But I believe that we're always changing, and so is our purpose. You know, like so is our reason for being here. So are our passions and our interests. So that's like can relate to spirit. It's just making sure, like just remembering that that drive of like change and evolution is a sense of purpose within itself. So when we have those deep experiences, and there's something that we can go deeper, is like when you have a wholesome integration, we have a challenging integration. Like the fact that you have a spiritual experience doesn't mean that it's going to be rainbows and unicorns in the integration. It can be very challenging because it can like really question your entire life framework, you know. But some tools that really help during that integration are just being in nature and like being connected to like the land, and like just remembering that the land holds you and like holds your intention and holds everything, rituals and ceremonies, and like just being mindful that everything can be a ceremony within itself, just cooking a meal, or going deeper into like having purpose circles or death lodges, or water ceremonies, or burning pots, you know, or just simple smudging around the house. The spiritual aspect of the ritual and a ceremony is super important with integration because it provides a sense of connection with something bigger than you, and there's a sense of reverence, and there's a sense of respect, and not only for spirit but for ourselves too, because every ceremony is to like hopefully have a sense of cleansiness, of like cleaning our vessel and being just like a hollow bone to like go out there and just receive. Meditation and contemplation and prayer are also super important in a spiritual integration. And even noticing the difference between a meditation and a prayer. Like a meditation is just coming in and prayer is going out, you know. So having that sense of like everything can be sacred, like there's sacredness in everything that we do, really helps with that integration. And again, like I'm not a spiritual guide or anything, but if somebody needs something that is more connected to that and more guidance in it, I'll refer them to somebody that has a bigger, more spiritual or religious practice that can really help them resonate, come to terms with what happened. So that's a little bit of the wholesome integration of spiritual experiences. And I don't know, like some things that make them like a positive integration is just being like having the capacity to hold other points of view, other or complexities or other universes out there that are not necessarily ours, but that we can see spirit in them, you know. So that's a wholesome integration. That's a wholesome integration also to the fact of being okay with change, with not knowing, with uncertainty. That's something that can really help that integration be something positive. And just attuning to others, you know, attuning to yourself, and like, this is my belief, this is my moral compass, but I can be okay to attuning with other person that has a different moral compass, but the fact that they're so intertwined with their own North Star can make me feel that we're on the right path, even though they're different paths. So those are like key elements of what a positive integration feels for spirit. In the flip side, you can like go into like a very narcissistic point of view where everybody's wrong. And with like I've had some of those where like I said at the beginning, you go into your ceremony and you come out of it and there's so many answers and so many downloads that you feel like everything's super clear and your line of sight is super clear. But you go back to your world where nobody else has had that ceremony or that experience, and you feel that they should be already on the boat. So it can be very frustrating where you're like not meeting the other person where they are and expecting them that they're completely aligned with everything that you have. So that can be a really big hurdle in integration. Also, losing yourself in spirit or in that belief in spirit is also challenging. You know, like at the end of the day, yeah, we connect with spirit and we are spirit within ourselves, but we are our own entities, you know. So it's important to know where I begin and where my belief or my truth also lands, you know, so I don't get lost in the concept of spirit, but I am connected to it. I think there's a like not a discrepancy, but a thin line that we can jump in there and get lost in it, you know.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really, really important observation and distinction. Because I know with my experience, I literally went from being a very analytical, factual, not very spiritual, not very religious person to, and I mean, the analytical, factual side has remained, but there's a deep, deep sense of spirituality that has come to be within me. And it's oftentimes very quiet, but I have to agree with what you're saying, is that at the beginning it was a very, very challenging process of sort of integrating the two and having the two worlds somehow meet and work with each other, as opposed to, feeling like an outsider, or feeling like, I don't know, you've experienced something that no one understands, and to not have the sometimes arrogance that goes with it, feeling like you've experienced something that other people haven't yet. And I wanted to talk about the positive and negative aspects of these spiritual journeys and plant ceremonies, and how to integrate those, because sometimes it can be a very negative journey, and how do people see past the negativity, which is often one of the most useful parts of the journey, and sort of integrated, and not reframing might be the wrong word, but to just have a clearer understanding of it.
Yeah, so I think that there's always going to be a positive and negative on any experience, and even more so in this like altered state of mind where everything can be amplified, you know. I learned that sacred plants are essentially an amplifier. They're not giving you anything external. They're just showing you stuff that maybe you don't have access on a day-to-day, access of parts of your consciousness that maybe you like, not even that you forgot that they were there, that you never seen it, because we're always walking in our day to day with like a specific view of things. And when we go into plant medicine, it just opens it up a little bit, and that's why it feels so like a self-discovery and like the spiritual connection, or like the more of like finding out ways, different ways of doing things. And when we come out of it, that's gonna close again, but it doesn't mean that it's away. It's always there. So I think like a positive component of sacred medicine is just remembering that that is there, and that is there not because somebody put it there. It's in you already. Like there's nothing external coming in. Something negative can be that, how do I get back to that? Like I need to get back to that. And the only way is doing medicine, and the other way is like doing more ceremonies, and that's when you use it, like when people just find it as a crutch more than a like a self-growing or self-development. That's why it's so important to integrate, because part of the integration is to show them that it's not about the ceremony itself. Of course that triggers everything, but it's how you integrate it to life that makes it a positive or a negative experience. Because you and I have had experiences with plant medicine that were incredibly challenging during the ceremony, and it's like, I don't want to do this ever again. This sucks. Like, why am I here in the first place? Get me out. But as we integrate it, we can see why things happen and what's the value in that. And like saying, like, all right, maybe I was holding on to something that it was not for me to hold on, or maybe it was for me to find out that everything changes and everything passes. So that was challenging, but that's gonna pass too, and something's gonna come back. So is the attachment to things that make it challenging? Is the attachment to bad things that I want them to end, and the attachment to good things that I want it to last forever? So it's a story that we tell ourselves of things that make it challenging or positive. But if we take it for what it is, which is just an opportunity to access part of you that maybe I don't have so much to it, I have to be okay with whatever shows up. I have to be okay with maybe something good is going to come up, or maybe something bad is going to come up, but it's coming up for me to see it so that I can integrate it, and that I can make some, I don't want to say make some sense of it, because sometimes we can't, but make it an ally for me versus something that is going to hinder me, you know? That's what I think makes a positive or a negative journey. And this is a touchy subject because this is based on my experience. And if you say this to somebody that had just gotten the worst ceremony and the worst experience over that, they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? I cannot relate to you, because I was just in hell. I was just in hell for 14 hours, and I don't know anything you're saying. There's nothing good that can come out of it. But I can only go about things based on what I've experienced and what I've learned and what resonates to me. and something hopefully will resonate with others. And if it doesn't, maybe you're going to show me something that I haven't seen, and hopefully something's going to pop up from me that we can meet each other in a middle ground. And that's what integration is about, knowing that that was your experience, but everybody's having a different experience. So you cannot think that your integration is also going to be the integration for the other person. So that's, I think, what makes it, what balances out the positive and the negative of sacred plants. And we've heard it many times, like the ceremony itself is the recess, and the integration is just like the classroom portion of it. So it's what we make of it, and it's the same thing with life. It's any event in life can be negative or positive depending how we look at it. You can go to the beach, and like somebody can love the beach and everything, and then my oldest son hated the sand, so every time we went to the beach it was just hell from him. So the same thing can be perceived so differently for each person.
Right. And I'm so glad that we're talking about, worst and challenging experiences within a plant medicine ceremony. And it's sort of leading into the next topic that I wanted to speak to you about. And this topic it's probably one of the most intriguing to me, but also the one that brings up the most discomfort. And it's the topic of shadow work within plant medicine ceremonies. Now, this channel is built a lot around, that Joseph Campbell quote of the cave that you fear to enter holds the jewels that you seek. And so, as uncomfortable as it is, I'm a huge, I'll call it, fan of shadow work, because I believe that there are jewels to be found in that shadow work if one has the courage and the willingness to step into it. So I wanted to speak to you about the concept of shadow work, and how individuals can sort of step into exploring the darker side of themselves and what to do around that.
Yeah, I think like this is a shared masochistic passion that we both have. And I say masochistic because of the initial perception, just the term shadow work. It feels so like cavey, like we're going in a cave, and like you're going deep into the realms of like the darkness within yourself, and we frame it like that. But I enjoy it. Like that's where the meat comes. That's where the juiciness comes. Like it's okay. It's beautiful when the journey is just like, let's go in the meadow and like walking the flowers and the unicorns and the rainbows and the thing. That's awesome. But it's really, really cool when you go into the depth of the gnarliest, most embarrassing, most shameful and guilt driven parts of you, and you come out of it and you're like, wow, that felt like, yes, I'm lighter and I am okay with myself, like through the many ceremonies and the many trainings and the many teachers that I've been in front of, I came to learn that we call it shadow work because it's just something that we want to put some light into. Like it's just something that wants to be seen, and it's something that wants to be acknowledged, and something that just wants to be dealt with. And it's not something outside of us, it's just a part of us. So when people like do psilocybin, for example, that's one medicine that really takes you into your own shadow. And there's that term of like, oh, I really don't want to have a bad trip. Like I had this bad trip once and I don't want to do it again. That was just an opportunity to see a part of yourself that is not seen. It's just a part of ourselves that it's in the darkness because we've never had the chance or the compassion or the awareness or the self-love just to put a little candle in front of it and just talk to it and say like, hey, what do you want? Like there's this beautiful practice called Feed Your Demons, which is essentially seeing a part of yourself and just asking it like, all right, what do you want? What do you need? And what would make you happy? And inevitably, the first question is like, I want you to be a piece of crap and I want you to feel bad about it. Like, all right, that's what you want, but what do you need? Like, I want you to be a piece of crap because I feel like you're never with me. Like I'm alone in here. And like I want you to be heard because you're hurting me by not seeing me. And then you go like, all right, what would make you happy? It's like, I want to hang out with you. I want you to just be with me. And all right, cool. And then you turn that demon into essentially an ally, because it can come from a place of something that really triggers you and something that really affects how you're doing, and you can turn it into, oh, this is something that can actually empower me, and I can go from being a fear and from being a hurdle to something that can really remind me that I am like this, and like how can I relate to other people that maybe feel the same way. So that to me is the beauty, the nice part of the shadow work, is just saying like, this is me, and I'm not gonna negate some part of me because it's shadowy or it's scary or it's not something that I've come to accept. And not only because I don't accept it, because I was taught not to accept it by somebody else. Like, boys don't cry. Don't you cry? You don't, like, you don't show emotions. You don't do that. It's like, all right. So there's a part of me that is shadowy, that is that I I am, if I show my emotions, I'm weak. But if you go to that and just like break that habit and that like indoctrination of like feeling emotions and projecting emotions as weakness, you can really go deep into your emotions, and it's a strength. And you know, like, you're connected to yourself, and you can connect you with others, and you have more compassion and more awareness of what is really a trigger and what is just an opportunity to see a situation in a different way. So I, again, going back to my initial line, I am a masochist when it comes to shadow. And I'm not gonna say that it's all peach and love, but most of those I've had the luck to come out with at least a sense of this happened because of this, that really puts things into perspective of, it's not so much a shadow, it's just a part of myself that now I welcome into my integration moving forward. And it can be, again, more tied to the emotional dimension that we were talking initially, which is emotional states and like romance and self-love and like feelings and my relation to shame, my relation to fear, and how I connect and belong, you know, like that's one that like it's really juicy, because if we accept that shadow, it just opens a completely different aspect of ourselves that was just in a drawer somewhere. So things like journaling or storytelling or music or even some high intensity stuff like rock climbing or dancing, that can really help you just connect to those emotions. Like maybe you're a painter that just painted really lively colors and everything, but this shadow can connect you with a different way to express yourself, that you can go to a darker way that is just putting stuff out there that you were never able to communicate before, you know.
I love that you use the word juicy in regard to shadow work, because I mean, again, from one masochist to another, I feel the exact same way. And I feel, you know, we live in a society where it's you push towards positivity and happiness and joy 24/7, and you expect it to be like that. But really, you know, as human beings, we have this massive range of emotions and feelings. And so why not for a little bit go in the complete opposite direction and just find out and see what's there? And I love what you said about shining a light on shadow work. And I feel like it's an interview almost all on its own. And if you're open to it, I would love to set that up with you and have that conversation in the future.
I would love that, because at the end of the day, it's like I said, it opens up a side of us that wasn't there before. And you're saying like, hey, it's easy to be a proponent of joy and happiness and like wellness, and everything is, you should be happy, you should be happy. But everything changes, and inevitably that joy, not to be dramatic or anything, but that happiness, there's going to be a point where it's going to go away for a little bit and something else is going to pop up. So it's going back to the attachment that we were talking about before. Like, if you're just so attached to joy and so attached to happiness and so attached to things going the right way and everything, inevitably you're going to crash at one moment, because everything changes and something's going to come up that is going to challenge you, and it's going to be like, all right, maybe this is not as joyful as the rest of things, but there's a sense of everything passes. And it's the same thing as the sky, you know, like when there's cloudy, the blue is behind it, but doesn't mean that I have to get stuck in like, oh my God, it's gonna rain and the clouds and the thing. Like, no, that's gonna pass too. Just have a relationship with that part of you that is uncomfortable right now. But if we don't deal with it, every time it comes, it's gonna still be uncomfortable. So we might as well just become friends with it, or just maybe not friends, maybe just accept that it's there. And you say, like, you know what, when it comes, I'm just going to have a different relationship with it. Because that's something that we also tell in integration and during ceremony, which is when we're talking about traumas, it's not like that trauma itself is going to go away. And there's many traumas that can really define people, and there's horrible things, and even positive, like traumas don't necessarily need to be negative. It's just something, an event in your life that really affected you, either a positive or a negative way. So it's not the event itself that we work with, it's the relationship to that event, the stories that we tell about that event that really makes us attached to it. So if we have a part of us that is a shadow that we're really attached to either staying with it or push it away, if we change that relationship and we essentially like not let it drive the car, but just be in the car with it and have the relation, every time it shows up is going to be lighter. So yes, joy is fun, happiness is fun, everybody should be smiling, everything should be peachy and great, but it's important to know that that doesn't last forever. And when that comes away and somebody cuts you off on the street, or somebody breaks up with you, or you have a bad day at work, it's not that you're not going to be joyful ever again. Is that at that moment, you're feeling something that is not joy, because we're not joyful people. We just feel joy. We're not angry people. We just feel anger. So it's important just to frame it that way.
Awesome. I'm so excited to explore that topic further with you in future. Carlos, coming back to the 7 dimensions, do you have any experience that you can share of someone who integrated a plant medicine ceremony, or an experience that you had in a plant medicine ceremony that was seen through the lens of the 7 dimensions?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, this is like the same thing of maybe like the will of life in Buddhism, or like there's many teachings that show you different elements of ourself. It doesn't mean that you're that element forever. Like if you in that stage, or like the 4 shields, where essentially you're in your childhood and then you go into your puberty and then you go into adulthood. It doesn't mean that you're there. It means that every event in your life you can be in a different place. So it's not that you, like, I've treated somebody and maybe they have a relational experience and that's the way that that person is going to be treated all the time. Even in the same experience, they might have a portion of it that is somatic and is spiritual. So you have to like mix and match the dimensions to make sure that they have the best integration possible, which goes to the initial point that we're making, that everybody's different. And even if somebody sits with the same plant, the same setting, the same facilitator, the same everything, it can be a completely different experience because we don't know where we're coming from. The set is what's important, which is that how you come into it. So yeah, we've had different people that needed different types of support based on where they were coming from and the type of experience that they had. So it's about navigating their experience and really listening to not only the experience but their intention. Like, what was their intention when they came in? What was the experience? Do we really feel that there's a sense of change in there, or there's a trepidance to go to change? Because we have people that have said like, oh, I'm ready to just quit smoking and or quit drinking and I'm ready for that, but maybe something came up that is deeper than that, that the reason why you're drinking is because you have this experience where you're a child, and then there. So we go into that. It's not about the eating disorder or the drinking habit or the addiction. Is what made that addiction some sort of outlet for that person to really cope with the trauma that led them to that. So there needs to be a lot of listening in the intention portion, the ceremony, and the willingness to integrate to really know what type of dimension is the best one for that person.
Carlos, one quick question before we start to wrap things up. Are plant medicines and these experiences for everyone?
That's a really good and important question. I would love to say that it is, but it's not. There's many people that histories and has different situations that make them not an ideal candidate for plant medicine, because plant medicine at the end can trigger things that from one end we think might be supported with plant medicine, but things like psychosis or schizophrenia, or like more like mental health, that like situations that might not even be diagnosed, but things that are genetic can be triggered and can be dormant, that can be just exacerbated with plant medicine. So it's really important, like what we're saying in the beginning, the intention, the ceremony, and the integration. In the intention portion, that whole setting of the intention comes with a really deep screening process and an intake process where we learn where the person is coming from and what they're trying to take out of it and what's their history, not only in mental health, but in like medical history. Has there been any like really important surgery that they had that really affected them, that might trigger some other things? How's the relationship with their community, their family, their support system? Do they have a support system that they can go back to? And again, we're not doing, like, I'm not doing this just as a facilitator or like holding space. To me, it's important that it's some sort of support for the person that comes here. So if I identify that maybe you're not an ideal candidate, it goes back to knowing where I begin and where I end, because maybe I can refer you to a therapist, or I can refer you to a more holistic healer, or somebody that can really help you, but not necessarily go into plant medicine. And to that point, there's many plant medicines that are not the ones that we all know of that can really helpful. There are herbalists that can really help you if you're not a candidate for plant medicine. So that's a really good question that not only like as a participant you need to be cognizant of, but as a facilitator you need to be really ethical and really embodied who you want to be a facilitator. If you want to just go at it and give medicine to people because you want to do it, or if you want to really support the person in their self-development and their personal evolution.
Thank you, Carlos. Do you have any book recommendations of books or videos that you've watched that have been helpful to you in learning or understanding the process better that you could recommend?
A couple of books that really helped me learning a little bit more in terms of like how to hold space and how to help people. Like one, it's a Consciousness Medicine by Francois Boursat. Like I'm butchering her name, of course, but that was a really good book. And there's some ethical thing, like she's had some trouble with her organization, so not promoting the entirety of it, but the learnings from that book were really, really good. And there's also The Ethics of Caring by Kaelia Taylor, that really it's more for like for facilitating training and how to relate with clients and everything, but it really frames it in a very ethical and very integral way. So it's really, those are really good books that even if not for facilitating, it really helps to set a framework of the entire process.
Great. Thank you so much. And Carlos, one last question in closing. What is your message to the world?
I think that my message to the world, framing it in the conversation that we had, is that all these experiences can feel like really personal and really transformational in an individual way, but we're always going to go back to our communities and always going to go back to our families. So the fact that we're doing this, it's amazing because we're not only bettering ourselves, we're going back to our communities, and it's a way of helping everybody that's around us. The fact that we're working on ourselves means that we're working on our families, our communities, and inevitably the world. So my message would be to stay curious and continue to delve into these conversations and these experiences that really allow us to return this body and this soul a little better than what we got it.
Well said. And Carlos, I wanted to say thank you for your time today. Thank you for this interview. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And I want to acknowledge you for the ongoing passion that you have through plant medicines, all that you study. And more than anything, I know that you do it always in function of being a help to people and being of service to people. I know that that's where it genuinely comes from for you. And the other thing that I wanted to acknowledge you for is for always taking a keen interest and a curiosity into the deeper topics and conversations of life, and always having the willingness and the courage to go there. It is so appreciated from my side. I find it's very difficult to find, but when you do it, it's like finding a jewel in the cave. So thank you again, Carlos.
Thank you so much for those words. And I feel exactly the same about you. Like what you're doing with these interviews and everything that you do is just amazing, just to see the passion and the devotion there, and just the curiosity and the childlike wonder of like everything. We can go deeper, and it's so fascinating. It's really rewarding to find somebody and have you in my life to like really just be masochists together and like be just curious and talking about these things that just are so passionate about that we can just do it for hours and hours. So I appreciate you, and just really love you, and I feel that can't wait for the many, many, many conversations that we're going to keep having throughout our relationship.
Yeah, and it's exploring the 20 million rabbit holes that become 20 million other rabbit holes, and it's an ongoing and beautiful process and inquiry. I love being in it. And so for those of you who are watching, if you have enjoyed the content, I encourage you to like, share, comment. If you'd like to reach out to Carlos and find out more about him, or if you have questions for him based on what he said, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'll also be putting links to Carlos's website in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this interview and want to join us on other interviews, again, please like and share and comment. Looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.